Welcome back, listeners, to another episode on the Biz Blend podcast with your host, Sana. Now, you all know that this is the space where we stop pretending that quote unquote hustling harder is a personality trait, and actually, we talk about what leadership costs us. So, if you have done everything right in your career, you have hit the targets, you have built the team, you got the title, maybe even the exit, yet you still wake up tired, maybe a little numb, and weirdly alone in rooms you fought so hard to get into. And this one is for you, listeners. And today we are unpacking a hard truth. A lot of high achieving leaders are quietly burning out while their LinkedIn profile looks incredible. On paper, they are winning, in their body, in their relationships, not so much. The conventional leadership playbook tells you to be available, to show up, be decisive, be resilient, be the rock. It rarely asks what that is doing to your nervous system, your sense of identity, or your actual joy. So, in this conversation, we'll be looking at the real cost of how we currently do leadership, the early warning signs most executives ignore because the business is still growing, practical, purpose driven ways to reset so your work has impact without you quietly disappearing inside your own success. And to help me with this conversation, I have an incredible guest with me, Nicole Leigh Anderson. She has 20 years of working experience with high achievers, and she brings us real stories, raw stories with from the people, from the leaders she has worked with. And also, she'll bring us some practical, raw, real strategies that we can actually use in our daily lives immediately. So, with that, Nicole, welcome to Bizplan, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Oh, thank you so much. That was a great introduction and overview of the reality of what leaders are facing today. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And I mean, this is so evident right now, and I think it is so also absolutely crucial to begin talking about it, because I think most of the problem kind of or the concern is addressed when it is acknowledged that yes, this is a problem. This is a kind of gray area or a gap here that we need to address. So with that, a lot of leaders would say that they have followed all the rules, yet they feel exhausted. They feel alone. So from what you see, Nicole, what is actually underneath that feeling? Like, what is the real emotional cost of doing everything right?
Hmm. Yeah, it's such a good question, right? And so many of the leaders that we work with are high achieving. They want to make a big impact. They want to do some big things. And, the rules of engagement up to this point have really been to do more, to say yes, to hustle so that they show that they can prove themselves. I was just talking to a leader today, actually, who was saying, I'm a year and a half into my job and I just need to prove myself. I need to keep saying yes. And so this hustle paradox has a cost. And and the reality is it doesn't really stop us until things start falling apart. And usually what we're seeing is it's our health. It's the I just can't go anymore because my body or my mind or I'm overwhelmed, I'm exhausted, I'm falling apart. And it gets to the point where the health is starting to really fall apart, where they're like, "Oh, wait, maybe something isn't working." And that's a dangerous game to play when you let it get that far, before we're starting to say like, "Oof, something's something's not right here."
And that is right, because I hear a lot from a lot of founders, executives, that I do not have that liberty, that privilege to complain because people look up to me, people depend on me. So I mean, I shouldn't use the word, but kind they gaslight themselves before anyone else can. And also one thing, Nicole, that comes to my mind is, not only the leadership playbooks or, whatever we learn, but I think when someone as an individual contributor gets into that leadership or let's say managerial position, um, they have a huge responsibility upon their shoulders. And it kind of becomes like this, do or die situation to prove themselves credible enough to deserve that position. So, um, how do you help them start telling, this truth that, I should be happy, nothing is actually wrong. It will take its own time.
Mm. Yeah, and you hit on something so important. When people become managers and they take on this responsibility, we can't avoid the fact that a large majority of people that take on manager roles really aren't afforded any training, right? They've been given the promotion because they're good in their technical role,
Mm.
and then they get these promotions and it's like, okay, well go do great things without the support, without the coaching, without the training. And so we're really not setting up our leaders for success from the very beginning. And then you keep going,
Yeah.
right? And you continue to take on more responsibility. I mean the there's a million books out there, right, about how to be leaders. There's ways you can self-study. But I think the thing that keeps coming up the most in my conversations with the leaders that we work with is just this sense of, um, like a disconnect between, what does success look like for them,
Mhm.
and when we actually stop and pause and say, what would your 10 out of 10 week look like? Like actually put that on paper. Go get a piece of printer paper, just clean white and like draw it out, put it on pictures, keywords, just do a dump. Carry that around with you for a week and fill in blanks. Like really think about what that 10 out of 10 week would be. It's incredible the shifts that start to happen, and I certainly don't wanna oversimplify, but what I found is that when people have that clarity, and then they also do the work to understand what is my purpose? What am I giving? How can um, how can I serve others in a way that's aligned with my purpose? Those 2 things combined become a powerful force for leaders. It gives them an anchor. It serves as a guide. You can set goals. I definitely recommend setting goals. I'm not poo-pooing that. But before we have goals, we need to understand what is my purpose and what does success look like for me, and then design the rest of it. The rest becomes so much easier.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it may sound simple when said, but I think um it has its own magic, but the magic happens only when, we start accepting it. And I think it takes its own time, but then I think you know, it gives people permission to say that okay, something feels off and I get to look at it. And Nicole, um let's talk about burnout, or misalignment, as you mentioned about identifying our purpose. Sometimes in all this automated mode or this hustle mode, people popularly call it, um, leaders or maybe someone who is just new to the leadership position, they may not be able to even figure out that they're kind of feeling exhausted. They may kind of lose that spark even to wake up in the morning, get ready, or even do the most basic activities they love to do. Because personally I have gone through, so I know some of the warning signs, but because you have worked with so many leaders, what are some of the early warning signs of burnout or misalignment that high performers almost always ignore or rationalize away?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and when you said lose the spark, I mean, that absolutely is one of the biggest warning signs. I think there's a number of, organizations where the back-to-back meetings have become status quo,
Yeah.
and, um, and that's another indicator, right? When we get to the end of the day and we're taking our first breath, when we're closing out our machines to run to the evening events or family activities just to log back in at the end of the day to actually do the real work, right? Have you heard that, right? Like I've got meetings all day, so then the real work that I need to do has to happen nights and weekends. People just kind of default to that.
Yeah.
So so those are indicators when there's not space in the day um, to we call it white space, right? It's that space to really think about and just let the brain be creative when we don't have spots. If we look at our week and say, I don't have any spots for creative thinking, that's a huge red flag. And people treat like pause practices as a like I'm going to reward myself because I worked hard today. When in reality, it's actually reverse, right? To be strategic about our how we think about our brains and our creativity, we want to create those pause practices strategically throughout the day so that we can be creative. Um, so yeah, so when folks are feeling like I don't know why I'm doing what I do anymore, that starts to breed that's loss of spark. And when we don't create space in the day for actually letting our brain do the thing that it's designed to do, um, then we start to lose those are some of the early indicators of I mean, I think most people that we've worked with, unfortunately, one of the most common things we keep hearing is, "I have to work on the weekends in order um, to be productive," or I have to work double before I take a vacation so that I'm not caught up. Like, these are all things that the have become status quo, but they are actually signs. They are warning signs that say, that this doesn't have to be the norm. I could keep going, but I'll stop. That's a great question.
No, I love that because I can also because as you mentioned, I mean so many thoughts because I've seen firsthand, many of my friends going through that, personally going through that, especially, that working on weekends just to be step ahead of my other, you know, quote unquote, colleagues, because we kind of, there's this culture of competing against each other or maybe against other teams. Oh my goodness, I have to achieve this, achieve this. So it's that, that kind of that fire. Um, it, I mean, felt really kind of exhilarating and very adventurous initially, but then gradually, it kind of, started creeping in, maybe in forms of first, at, I hated waking up in the morning, going for office. And this is, I'm telling, just, right after the pandemic ended and the kind of return to office culture once again gained its importance that I hated that. I hated doing the most basic stuff and something that I loved. That creativity was almost gone, as you perfectly
Mm,
mentioned. Um, Another thing, which you mentioned is the back-to-back meetings. Um, I mean, I have seen firsthand, many of my friends who are very creative in terms of, doing critical thinking in terms of looking at challenges or problems. But just because the whole day, the 8 or 9 hours, they are in back to back meetings, like when I ask them, okay, how was your day? And, I just, I just have been in meetings. I couldn't get any time to do the actual work I wanted to do. And it's exactly the conversation as you mentioned. And also, Nicole, let's say we're having this conversation that, with a high performing leader or a manager that, okay, you need to understand what's your value, what's your this, what's your that. But then there's a kind of pushback in terms of that, you know, I don't have any option here because this is helping me paying my bills. This is also helping me growing in my career. If this is something that I have to sacrifice, I have to do it. I do not have that option. How do you help, kind of go past that mindset? Because I mean, it is something that we cannot even say that no, it is wrong, it is wrong.
Yeah, the mindset piece is this is going to be a longer conversation. So let me just give you the my short version. Um, the the interesting thing about mindset
Mm-hmm.
is things happen and we associate meaning with them. And we have somewhere often, leaders come up with this meaning in their head that when I'm saying yes to meetings, to my boss, to my team, um, that I am that there's this um, kind of a positive association to it. What I mean by that is when I say yes, then that means things are going to be received well.
Mm-hmm.
What we're in conversations working through this with leaders, what we end up surfacing is that when we're saying yes to all the things, what are we actually saying no to? So for instance, when I'm saying yes to the meetings as a leader, I worked with someone. Well, I'll just give you my own example. Years ago, I managed a team. There were 5 of us, and it was a highly collaborative team. That was part of our culture. And so, as a result, generally in those kinds of cultures, it's common for there to be a lot of meetings to do these brainstorming. And so, I had turned this meaning to I'm supporting my team when I'm collaborating with them, when I'm brainstorming with them, when I'm saying yes to the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And through some work that I did with coach, we started to really unpack, well, when I say uh, yes to these meetings, what am I saying no to? And then when I'm doing that, when I actually said no to the meeting, what am I allowing them to do differently? So when I started to step away from some of these meetings that I argued with my coach, Sana. I argued with her about how it was critical for these meetings, and she really pushed. And some of these things take time, right? They take someone to really kind of work through some of these, the meaning and the mindset that we have. When I started to recognize what opportunities they weren't having because I was in the room, that started to shift. Well, when I'm saying no to the meeting, I'm actually allowing them to lead differently, to stand up, take ownership, be empowered. And and so it really started to shift the dynamic of the team when I started holding space. So Friday afternoons became my kind of a no meeting time.
Okay.
And in a leadership role, I was able to influence the organization too. So over time, now this doesn't happen overnight. And I know it's not for everybody, but we're able to influence the organization to take, Friday afternoons as our like no meeting time. So I don't know. I could keep going. I'll
Well,
pause.
I no, I love that, because um I think there's a bit of accountability here as well, specifically from the top down, because the kind of culture it starts building from the top, the individual themselves, and then it's a cascading effect. Um, and I think there are some really, really good workplaces which are implementing such kind of, no meeting Fridays, or maybe a midday in the weekdays in the week where there are no meetings. It's just time for the creative work, for the actual work. But I think it's just a surface level that we have barely scratched upon. And but I think I'm personally very bullish on the fact that the definition or the mindset around this is actually now changing with more and more conversations and discussions around it because it is creating awareness.
Mhm.
And I think it is also very much evident because uh, this manifests like physically. Like when we talk about burnout or misalignment, it also manifests physically. And I would love to know your opinion on it. I mean, your experiences, maybe because you have worked with. So, what's your thought?
Yes. I mean, I think the, 2 thoughts are coming to mind. One, this concept of how the stress manifests physically, I mean, very, uh it's different for everyone, right? Um, this is where a lot of the somatic work starts to come in, where people where we've, many at least I won't say for everyone, right? Like,
Mhm.
this is some deep work, but, oftentimes we've been taught to not really listen to what our body is telling us. And
Mm.
so when we're, oftentimes when it manifests physically, like a lot of the leaders that I talk to, they're experiencing it in sickness, in can't sleep. Um, they're experiencing it in blood pressure increases, in like physical manifestations of things that are happening. And because they're so overwhelmed and exhausted,
Mhm.
just scheduling the doctor appointment to, like, go talk to somebody becomes, like, unreachable, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think the first step is really just noticing as the before changing anything, right? The biggest thing is just start noticing
Mm.
and, um at the end of each day or the middle of the day, like take stock, like how am I feeling? Where am I carrying this stress? Where is it showing up? And then just take little note, right? Just notice it. And that can take sometimes 2 weeks of just being aware of it. And when you could see it, you
Mm.
can't unsee it. So once you've noticed that feeling or noticed the like, oh, I've had 4 days of half the sleep that I feel like my body needs,
Yeah.
um, it becomes something that you kind of can't unsee it. So then the second piece is, well, what do I do about it? And so often you hit it on the head earlier. So often it's so easy to think I can't change anything. It's leadership. It's somebody else higher in the organization. It's that other department. Like I can't change them. And you're absolutely right. Can't change other folks.
Mm.
But what you can do is um, start creating experiments.
Yeah.
So if I want to create an experiment, let's say I know my calendar is booked the next 2 weeks, I can't touch it. There's nothing I can do. Okay, fine. So then in 2 weeks, put on your calendar 30 minutes a day for just white space, nothing. And it's clear because we're 2 weeks out, right? And then just experiment with it. What did I do with that 30 minutes? Was I able to take a walk? Was I able to get outside? Was I able to open my mind to some creative problem solving? And just experiment and see what worked about it, what didn't, and then try something else. I mean, so often, especially as high performing leaders, we feel like we have to have the answer or the perfect way.
Exactly.
And the reality is the power is really in the experimentation and the micro, experiments and the noticing, right? And the combination of those 2 start to create change in the day to day.
Yeah. That absolutely makes sense. So, Nicole, before we wrap up, if our listeners, especially any leader or any high achieving performer who's listening to this conversation, they would like to reach out to you to get started on this journey, and also they would like to share their thoughts about this conversation with you, what would be the best way to connect?
Oh, I'd love to connect with leaders and just talk about, what your experiences are and what's working for you. You can find me on LinkedIn, Nicole Anderson, or on our website, thekalergroup.com. And I would love to hear from our audience and just hear your stories because that's really where the power is, right? It's in connecting with other people and building community and growing that way. So thanks for that question.
Totally, totally. And listeners, what I'll do for you is I'll have all the details, the links in the show notes to reach out to Nicole. So feel free to share your thoughts. Feel free to take help of her resources, of her experiences, and her wisdom. And if you are a leader, a founder, a C level, or the unofficial emotional CEO of your family, and you are tired in a way sleep does not fix, you're not broken. You are not
Mm,
ungrateful, but you're probably running a human nervous system on an inhuman settings menu. So, thank you so much, Nicole, for this such an organic and really, really profound conversation. Thank you for encouraging this. This really needs to be dressed upon.
mm. Thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
So, listeners, if here's the piece I want to leave you with. Your business, your team, your clients, they do not need you to be superhuman. They need you to be resourced, honest, and present. Success that empties you out will not feel like success for long. So, if this episode hits a nerve, do not just nod and move on to the next meeting. Pick one insight that Nicole shared with you today and that stood out for you. Maybe one boundary, one habit, one conversation. Experiment it, make changes, make tweaks, put it on your calendar like you would do a board review. You are allowed to redesign how you lead. And until next time, you have been listening to Biz Blend. This is your host, Sana, signing off. Please take care. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you.